Good evening. So the first thing, as always, is to get rid of the day, get rid of the thoughts, all those exciting things that happened today, whether it was a business matter or a personal relationship, or the tension of driving through the street in the rain. And just right now, start life really afresh. That's the theme of these 3 talks we're going to have. So even to do it physically helps. It gives, as we have learned before, to relax physically, just let the jaw drop a little bit. Go real slow. And not have any concern over the fact that the pace, the inward pace, has changed. Whoever said that a racing mind, that flooding emotions were right and necessary? Who said so? Only the habit itself. And we listen to that habit of chasing around in our mind as if it had some sacred authority to it. Just as if what it says must be obeyed, must be followed simply because it says that your mind has to race, you have to talk and chatter, your mind has to talk and chatter. Don't believe it. You challenge the false authority of every conditioned wrong feeling that you have that perhaps unknown to you, you have brought into this room tonight. So that a new part of you, a really relaxed part, a part that really wants to know, can be dominant. So with that, I want to go over tonight, I want to tell you a story, an illustrative story, that will tell you from beginning to end, the very beginning to end, the human condition, what all of us are doing here in life. And you'll see as I go along with this illustration that it tells you, it answers, rather, every question that you have ever had about life, if you can hear the answer. If there's something in you that's hungry for it and wants to know the solution to every difficulty in life, the solution to your anxiety over your advancing years, over the fact that you think you might not have made it according to society's ideas of making it, and think that you might never make it. Over all those things that are tearing at you inside, and you don't know who to ask about them. You don't know who to talk to. You're afraid that if you ask someone that they don't know the answer, or that they'll lie to you, or they'll bluff out an answer. You'll be right back where you started. This is the way it's been. Tonight you'll hear some answers. You can take them right out of this room when we're all through here tonight. All right? There's once a city of men, women, and children in which all the citizens were frightened, having no direction in life. Oh, they had their daily activities, they went to work, and they had their homes, and they had their families, and they had their activities in various fields, and they had entertainment, and they had business enterprises, and they had their marriage, and they had sex, and they had romance, and they had agriculture, and they had manufacturing. But in this city, they also had a lot of sorrow. They also had a lot of heaviness in their spirits. And they thought about it, and they wondered what was the cause of their internal difficulties. Why, in spite of all the things they were doing, all the plans they had for the future, why, in spite of all the plans, none of them really seemed to work out so that something changed internally. They were still quarrelsome among each other, still unhappy. No solution. So finally they get thinking about the location of their city. And they became aware that the homes and factories of this city was surrounded by, ringed by dark woods and swamps and moors, dark hills, bushes, reeds, swamps, which they didn't understand, but nevertheless the whole city was surrounded by this foggy darkness of various geographical descriptions outside and surrounding them. And as they thought about their problems, and their confusions, and their insanities toward each other, hurting each other all the time, dominating each other, being cruel to each other, they made the following comment among each other. They said, "We think we know why we're having so many problems. Because out there surrounding this city, which has physical light, electricity, there must be demons out there, there must be ghosts, there must be dragons." And they went on to give various descriptions of negative spirits, negative forces that they believed existed out there. And they, the ghosts and the imps and the fiends and the devils, the demons, they were the cause of their unhappiness. The demons out there, which they didn't understand at all, but they saw all this darkness out there, and all this fog, and they figured something very evil must live out there because they didn't understand it, and they were afraid to go out there to explore it. So that was the enemy. That was the opposition. This is where all their trouble stemmed from, something that seemed to come in and infiltrate them, their physical bodies and their social lives, and make them as unhappy as they were. So they called a meeting, the whole city, to try to find a way to keep these evil spirits from invading the city and taking them over. And they thought of different things. Some were too expensive, some weren't practical, some just wouldn't work out, they figured. So they finally settled on one plan. What we'll do, they said, is build a large, high, thick wall around the entire city, so that this wall separates us from these dark forces out there which seem to be taking over our lives. And they went back and forth on a little bit and finally decided this is the practical thing to do. So they agreed on it. So the wall building began. And it went on for a long, long time to build up this very solid structure that ringed the city. But finally, after long hard work and a lot of disagreement, it should be this thick, no this thick, this tall, no that tall, and they fought about it, but they finally constructed the wall around the entire city. And they gave a big celebration as soon as the work was done. Now we are safe. Nothing possibly can sneak in from the night as apparently it did before to cause us grief. All these walls around the city will protect us. And they held a celebration and a party and felt greatly relieved that they've solved the problem, they believe. But at the end of just a short time, another week, they were baffled at what had happened. Something had happened that they hadn't counted on, which hurt them and tripled their confusion. And what had happened was that in spite of this tall, thick wall, They were still unhappy. They were still desperate. They didn't want to admit they'd made a mistake, but they said there's something wrong, we can't figure it out. So they continued to live. Many, many more years passed. The wall kept getting thicker and harder as they added to it, hoping that that would somehow keep out whatever was out there, all these ghosts that kept making them unhappy and threatening them. They felt they lived under a great threat. Many years went by, and of course, life went on inside the city, and many children were born. And as the children grew up, they, of course, were told what the wall was all about and why it had been built around the entire city. They were told, look, children, out there is something we don't understand, but we think it is causing us horrible grief. All the problems that you have are coming from out there. So we built this wall. Now, children, little daughter, little son, I want you to remember you must never venture outside that wall, because we don't know what will happen to you. All we know is that something very, very bad will happen if you go beyond the wall. Stay inside, right in this construction that we've had, so you feel safe. In here you're safe. Out there you're in danger. So this is what the children were told, and this is what they believed. So of course they became afraid too of whatever it was they didn't know outside the wall. And there were guards patrolling it day and night, walking the top of the wall, making sure that no one ever tried to get over there, because they wanted to protect everyone from the folly of going beyond the wall, exploring the dark unknown out there. Again, time went on, and this was the life of everyone in the city. The only thing they ever knew was to stay inside and be scared and confused, and to cry a lot, and to get angry a lot. One day, one small boy who was born in the city and who had been conditioned, as all the children were, who had been told all the details about the wall and the fog outside. There's something different about him, and he didn't understand why he was different, but he sensed, even as a little boy, that there's alive inside of him from as a young man, young boy. There was a vital curiosity about the stories he'd been told, about the ghosts and the imps and the fiends and the dragons, and every description of evil that he'd been told were out there. And even though he played games with the other children, and he had his birthday parties, and he had his schooling, this curiosity about the wall and what was beyond it kept after him, and he asked people questions about it, and they all told him the same thing. He asked his teachers, he asked his parents, he asked his friends, and they all reacted in the same way, which was, stay here where you're safe and think about other things than the wall and what's beyond it. But he couldn't. So one night, as he grew a little older, as he grew up, as he matured a bit, he said, I'm going to investigate this very strange situation for myself. I am not satisfied with the explanation that people have given me. I just don't buy it. I don't go for it. There's something in me that won't accept it. And I'm going to find out why I can't accept it. So one night he took a rope, got over to the wall, and climbed up. Just then, as he got to the top of the wall, ready to drop over the other side, the dark other side, a guard came along and scolded him severely and told him, don't you know what you're doing up here? Get back home where you're safe. Why do you think we have guards here? To protect you from whatever is out there. So, because the guard had a good deal of authority, he went back home. Next night he tried again, got caught again, was sent back home. Next night tried again, was caught again, went back home. By now he's beginning to get scolded by people, including his parents. Why don't you live according to the rules of our society here? Why can't you behave normally, son, like everybody else is? What's the matter with you? You're causing embarrassment to your parents and to all the other people on the block because they know you live here. And quite frankly, son, they think you're a little odd. Please conform. Please behave sanely like the rest of us. He couldn't stop. So one night, having studied the situation a little more carefully, he again took his rope, went off to a far corner of the wall where he had investigated the schedule of the guards, and when the guards were at the wrong end, threw the rope up with a hook, caught on the top of the wall, climbed up, threw the rope down the other side, hooked it on top, climbed down real fast, turned around and walked off into the darkness. Next morning, his parents and his friends and neighbors said, where's our young friend? What happened to him? Well, surely he'll return. He probably went somewhere to amuse himself or walk around somewhere because he has all these problems. He's probably trying to work them out. But he didn't show up. He didn't return. They began to worry about him because one day passed and 2 days passed. And in a small city like this, the absence of one person became very obvious. So they, well, maybe an accident happened to him. So they searched around, searched the canals and searched the factories in case something had happened to him. Didn't find him at all. And they were very sad. They began to wail that they'd lost one of their friends, but they didn't know how. Then one of the guards had happened to walk down in that corner of the wall, saw the rope which had fallen off into the dark side in there, but it was visible down at the bottom. And in great excitement, he ran back and told everyone, our friend, our foolish, mad friend, has gone over the wall. He's walked out into that darkness there. We don't know what's happened to him, but that is where he is. And they all begin to wail again and be sorrowful that this young man's insanity had driven him out of calm, normal society out to who knows what out there. So they had a great sorrowful time over it and wailed the loss of their friend. On the third morning, there he was, just walking down the main street, alive, healthy. Someone looked out of their house, and there he was. And they ran up, where have you been? We've been looking all over for you. And that shouting caused another neighbor to look out, and another neighbor. Pretty soon, he was surrounded by 100 people who wanted an explanation of what had happened. Curiosity partly, because we understand that you actually went over that wall. The guard said the rope was down there. You went in that wall and you disappeared in the darkness. Are you all right? What's out there? They had 1,000 questions to ask him. And he was very poised and very calm. He said, you're all so curious as what happened. It'll take me some time to give you the full story. I will tell you this. It's a marvelous story. You wouldn't believe how really exciting it is what I have to tell you. And he said, well, tell us. He said, well, look, it's so profound. I'm going to need a lot of time. He said, I'll tell you what. His friend said, tell you what, let's go down to the community hall. We'll rent it out for the night. And we'll all come and we'll hear this marvelous story that you have to tell us. He said, fine. Set it up. We'll come tonight if you like. We'll set it up for tonight. So sure enough, it's 7:30 that night, Thursday night. The room was packed with all these people who were astonished that anyone had ever ventured outside the wall and had come back to tell them about it. They were just with an intense curiosity, a burning to know what it was all about. Someone had actually gone out there and come back. Time came for the meeting, and he was up in front there and started to tell him. He said, first of all, the first thing I want to tell you is that indeed, I did go over the wall. I went out into that darkness, right out to it, right into the, whatever you called it out there, your hills, your swamps, your marshes. And I came back. And I want to tell you two main things. Two things. First, I want to tell you that I've conquered all fear. I want to tell you that I've conquered all confusion. I want to tell you that I understand everything that goes on out there in what you call darkness. Because I explored it thoroughly. I went all around, circled the city several times, back, forth, up, down. I know everything about what goes on out there. You can ask me questions if you want, and I'll tell you about them. They were so excited. They could hardly wait for him to go on. All his friends out there, and they praised him. We admire you, would love you in making this investigation. It's a place that we have feared to go into. Tell us more, please tell us more. He said, all right, now I'm going to tell you the second thing. And be prepared for this because it's quite shocking. And you may not understand me. And if you don't understand me, that's all right. If you're so shocked by it, ask me questions and I'll explain it to you. Then your shock will go away. All you have to do is ask me and I'll tell you. So they quieted down. They wanted to hear what this second vital fact was. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, those evils and those devils are inside the wall. And there was silence for a minute. And puzzled looks on the faces of the audience out there. And he said, I'll explain it in detail. You would have thought that all these ghosts and all these fiends and all these devils and all these things that were tormenting you, you thought they were outside the wall. Now listen, what I'm telling you. They're in here. They're among us. They're inside the wall. And he paused. And he looked at the expressions on the faces of all the people out there. And he saw something in the faces of most of those people that he wouldn't have believed that he would have seen. But there it was out there. He saw hostility. He saw hatred. He saw sneering faces. And would you believe it? When he said that the evil is not out there, but it's in here, would you believe it that a number of people actually got up and walked out of that hall? Just got up right in the middle of his talking and walked out of there. 2 or 3 people that had come up and thrown their arms around him. Friend, we're so glad to see you back. What happened to you? They were among those first to get up and walk out. So he continued to tell them, repeated again, that anyone who will have the courage, or even go without courage, to go outside the wall and just explore it, they will shatter all the ghosts and goblins, all the fiends, all the terrible things that are out there, because you will understand it. He said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the whole thing, to understand it. And the first thing you have to understand, which I see that many of you don't want to do, is you have to see that all these horrible monsters exist inside you or inside me. That's where they are. That's where you have to work. It is foolish. It is cowardly. It is dishonest. It is painful. It is self-deceptive to say they're outside when they're inside. They're inside the wall. And if you will do that, if you begin to try to understand what I'm telling you, try to understand it instead of getting mad, instead of getting your vanity hurt and your ego hurt. Try to do the adult thing, do the sensible thing, do the right thing for your life. Begin to see where they are. And if you're scared, so you're scared. Look inside, see how much you lie to people about the kind of a person you are. You try to make them think you're nice, and you're not nice at all. And you project it and say the unniceness is out there. No, no, no. It's inside. For heaven's sakes, that's why you suffer. That's why I suffered for years. Because they were inside and I thought they were outside. It became so much easier to project them outward and say, I'm nice, it's the other person who's bad, it's the other country who's bad, it's the other city who's bad, it's the wife who's evil, or it's the husband who's evil, or it's society who persecutes me. Look, we're all a part of this society. And he went on to tell them that you can't go outside the wall in 2s and 3s and 5s and 6s. You have to do exactly what I did. If you want to find what I found, if you want to be free of yourself, if you don't want to tremble through life anymore, then you have to go all by yourself. But you see, when you dare to go all by yourself, then there's another force, another power that I discovered for myself. I was just as scared as you were. But I couldn't help myself. There's something that forced me to go on, and I don't know what it was, but I obeyed that message that says go out and find out what it's all about. And I found out that there's no real danger at all out there. The only danger is not seeing that it's in here. That, friends, the few of you who are left, he said, because by this time the hall was practically empty, he said, this is what it's all about. And I noticed that the few of you who have remained here, if you want to meet, say once a week, a couple times a week, I'll tell you everything that I've discovered out there. And so that's what happened. A couple times a week we all met, just as some of us do here. And as difficult as it was to understand, as hard as it was, little by little, they acquired the knowledge of what they must do. First of all, they acquired the facts. The facts, very simple. All by yourself now. You can't take mama with you. You can't take papa with you. You can't take your friends with you. You can't take your wife or husband with you. All by yourself, you have to go up over that wall and walk right into the darkness. Because look, the man was saying, even though I have described personally my experience, just because I've told you about it doesn't make it your experience any more than I tell you about taking a canoe trip down the river. I can describe it to you, but you have to experience the trip yourself, and the same with this wall experience. But I will tell you, it's the one thing, the most marvelous adventure you'll ever have. And when I came back here, originally came back after 3 days, I told you that even if you have to be afraid to do it, go ahead and do it. And you'll experience for yourself, gradually, that the fear, the darkness of these terrors out there will diminish through your own understanding. And you can come back here yourself, and I will know if any of you have come back from there, because you'll come up to me and you'll say certain things, you'll speak in a certain way, there'll be a certain manner about you where I will know that you have taken the journey, and you can't fake it. I'll know whether some of you try to fake it and tell me whether you've taken it or not, because I can watch the expression on your face, and I will know when you get scared, or you get withdrawn, or you get dependent on someone else. I will know that. But that's not the main point. The point is, you can do it. And in that understanding will be a whole new life from you. You'll come back to the city, and you'll go down to where you work, or you'll go back to your home where you've lived, or you'll have your friends, or you'll have your social occasions, you'll have your entertainment. You'll come back to the same city, and yet in a way which you will finally understand when you've gone through the process after the third day. When you come back, your life will be so different that mere words won't be able to describe it. You won't be able to tell your friends about it. You find it very difficult, just as I'm finding it difficult, the speaker said, to explain it to you. I can only use words. I can give you clues. I can give you certain guidances. And I must tell you to go because it's beautiful. And listen, I'm telling you, each one of you take a piece of paper and write 20 difficulties that you have. They'll all be gone. 20 confusions that you have, they'll all be gone. 20 fears that you have, they'll all be gone, because they were all caused by this mistake that we've made internally. Therefore, the correction of the mistake will erase every single one of them. And you'll walk different through life. And your face will be different. And your talk will be different. You won't put yourself under the authority of any other human being, because all the authority that you will ever need will come from yourself. And it will be spontaneous, and there'll be no vanity in it. There'll be no need to have power over any other human being. It'll be very quiet, and you'll know what it means to be authentically spiritual. And you won't pray your petty prayers like we used to do in this city. Remember how we used to pray in a wrong way? And remember how we used to pray even against other people? All that is gone. There'll just be a oneness and a certainty that your life is different, because your nature is the difference. And then you will know, just as I know, the speaker is concluding, then you'll know, as I know, that all is well. You'll know that all is well right now, right here in this city where you presently live, and you'll know wordlessly, without thought, you'll know that all is well forever. All is well for eternity, because you're in it now. If you have difficulty understanding what I'm saying, keep coming back, keep asking questions. But most of all, you drop down on the outside of that wall and take one step right into the darkness. You'll be able to do it. I'm telling you, you'll be able to do it. If I did it, you can do it. If I did it, you can do it. I know you can. There's no limitation as to the number of people who can do it, providing they want it. And I will tell you that it's quite possible. Just do it. Take the first step, right straight out in that darkness, not knowing where you're going, not knowing what's out there. Even what I've told you won't take the place of you doing it for yourself, because I'm giving you knowledge, and now you're acting upon that knowledge, which is so necessary. And after you take the first step, you will know something. And what you'll know is that you can take the second step, going straight forward right into it. And you take the second step, and you look down at yourself, and you say, what's wrong? Nothing's happened. I thought by this time a fiend would grab me. I thought a ghost would come gliding and scaring me. If I took 2 steps, I can take 3 steps, and then you take 3 steps. If I can take 3, I can take 4, 5, 6, 7. Till you get out there and you see for yourself exactly where all the dangers were, where all the threats were, where all the menaces were, which was inside me, but I didn't know it, because I said in my misunderstanding that they were out there. They're not. They're right here. Knowing that they're here. The very knowledge of it, the clear understanding of that is what makes them vanish once and for all. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the knowledge. Act on that knowledge. Do it for yourself. and you will know for yourself. We are indeed all friends here to the degree that each one of us wants the truth. In even just a small way, if you're just a beginner, if maybe you want to drop over the other side of the wall into self-exploration, even if you just want to do it but can't do it yet, that's marvelous. That's a start that's recognized by God, by truth. Your sincerity is recognized, and that sincerity will grow as you continue to attend classes like these, continue to work. You don't understand how much resistance you have. This is why a sign of growth is always preceded by some kind of a little jolt into seeing how hardened we are against anything that is unknown to us. Something that's new comes as a jolt because we don't know what to do with it. We know what to do with religious dogma, for example. We know what to do when someone expresses opinion that's similar to ours. All we do is nod our head and say that's right because we feel comfortable with it. You feel uncomfortable always at the start of hearing a new truth. The man who went over the wall for the first time and took that first step forward, he was uncomfortable about it because he didn't have 1,000 friends going with him. He didn't have the authorities with him. He didn't have his own conditioned ideas as to what was safe with him. He was abandoning himself to the unknown. And when you abandon yourself to the unknown, you are lost, but you're lost in a new way. And all you have to do is keep walking forward in your uncertainty. The second you get certain, you have gone back to the city. Because you got a little scared of what you're heading into. And I know that it's happened to every one of you in this room tonight. You get a little bit scared of where these things are taking you. And you're thinking, I'd better go back to the old ways of just mechanically listening to tapes maybe. If you mechanically listen to tapes or mechanically read books, you're playing it safe. And that is resistance, because there's no challenge there. Please understand the way you break down resistance is to walk forward while being scared, while trembling, while not knowing what's going to happen to you as a result of doing that. And you can go just as fast as you want, or you can go just as slow as you want into your fear. Always expose yourself to fear. Let it do anything it wants to you. Let it shake you all at once. Just keep going forward. And that act, all by itself, will shatter it because you'll begin to understand it. You're separating from it and beginning to see it and understand it. We don't have at the start 10 resistances to truth. We have an accumulation of a lifetime in them, 500 perhaps. And one by one, they become clear to us. We'll take one area alone. Have you ever noticed how concerned we are with making a favorable impression on someone? You're driving your car down the highway and you have a passenger in your car. And you want the passenger, whoever she may be, to be impressed with what a good driver you are, how courteous you are. And this is all calculated inside your mind, how you're going to impress this person with what a polite driver. Or you yell at people when you're alone. But you're with someone else, you want to say, what a nice person you are. Maybe you want something from them. So another driver comes out onto the freeway where you are, and right in front of the passenger in front of you, wave the other driver on. Pretty good impression, huh? Look how polite I am. And she couldn't help but see he or she, you wave right under their face. And you're unconscious of the fact that you did that, not because you're so polite, but because you wanted that other person to see how courteous. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, ma'am. My, what a marvelous human being I must be. Refusing to see things like that, little trickeries, is resistance. Refusing to see little things like that is resistance. So the next time you're about to do, there's 1,000 million examples. You can find your own. The next time you're about to do that, your hand starts to go up in your polite little gesture. Go ahead, sir. Ask yourself exactly, really now, why am I doing that? And if you're real honest, I understand the occasion you do that. We all do it. Come on, and avoid a wreck, and simply out of common courtesy. We know we do that. But I'm talking about where you would have the hidden motive of trying to impress someone. See it, catch it. That is breaking down resistance.
Do you see the answer to every problem you have? The only real answer and the final answer and the eternal answer is to be one with God. Look, how astonishing. Remember when you went to Sunday school? Remember when you were a little child and you were told sentences such as, love God, be one with God, obey God. And it sounded all right, but it didn't take, so you went away from it after a while. We're right back where we started. That was right. It was true. But we took it as religion. We took it as words. We took it as something nice that little kids should be told in Sunday school. And we knew our parents didn't live it. Of course we knew that. And so we cast it aside. I think it's one of the most astonishing discoveries we'll ever make. We come right back to see that there is a God after all. There really is a God after all. There really is true compassion after all. There really is rescue after all. But it's not the words. It's something much deeper than that. And that's what we're after, more than the words. People who live in pain love the pain. When you see what pain is doing against your opportunity to enter eternity, when you see that pain and eternity can't go together, that is the beginning of a spiritual initiative, which I'm sure is what you're talking about. When you see that nothing works, that will give you initiative. When you see you can't think your way out, that will give you initiative. That will give you initiative to stop trying to think your way out. Stop trying to be logical about it. You can be logical about building a house. I cut a board 10 feet long and I put 3 nails here and 3 nails. That's logic. That's fine. And that's memory. You have to have that. But you can't think your way out because you're trying to think for the salvation of a self that doesn't exist. How can you save someone who doesn't exist? But the seeing that you're trying to save someone who doesn't exist is your salvation. You're saving yourself from trying to do the impossible, trying to do the unnecessary. Once you see the fact that you have no existence according to your conditioning, according to your name, that is deliverance. Deliverance from the delusion that you need deliverance, because there's no one there to be saved, and that is salvation. Beautiful. When you get it, the whole bricks fall off the back, and you can get it. What do you suppose will happen if you talk to your friends about these things that we've talked about tonight? What do you think they'll say? You know, don't you? You know. Of course it's overwhelming. Overwhelming in a way which our pains never were. We're being overwhelmed with authentic rightness, authentic beauty, authentic hope. Open the gates altogether. Let it flood in. We're afraid, We're afraid what this newness, what this unknown is going to do us. Why don't you find out? Instead of resisting it, Why don't you receive it and see what happens to you internally and also externally, because one will affect the other, by giving up your resistance. We can go out of here, each one of us, if we wish, if we want it strong enough. We can go out of here another foot above the level of this world by being very attentive tonight, more attentive to the truth that is trying to get through to you, to me, at this very minute that we're seated here. We always forget that at all times, God, reality, this higher power, is trying to penetrate our minds to tell us something different, to give us something different than we've ever had. But we walk around in such a daze, including the period of time that perhaps you were in this room before the meeting started, not being even awake to the fact that in a little bit you would be hearing certain truths that if you could have made yourself receptive before and then when it did start, you would say, I've had enough of the kind of a day that I've had today. And anything I can do to change it is well worth the effort. Well worth it is a mild way to put it. And I want to illustrate today, in this talk, a very basic principle which we forget and which keeps us in this non-receptive mood. I'm going to say it in several ways, and I'll give you an illustrative story on it. Every human being, including us in this room, who has problems, who has worries, who has pressures from this world, who has pressures from yourself, everyone who has hatred in him, everyone who has suppressed violence, everyone who has concerns about himself in any way at all, to the degree of his suffering, to use a generalized word, to the degree of his suffering, he or she is in a state of pretense. Now go real slow with me. You don't know how important it is for you to understand this so you can go out of here with a seed of something to work with. All pain, all confusion, all envy, all regret, all nervousness, all withdrawal is accompanied by an unconscious pretense that one knows what he is all about and what his life is all about. He or she thinks that he understands, but he doesn't know that he has this pretense, because pretense is always unconscious. When we're pretending, when we're bluffing, when we're faking, we don't know we have it because the very state itself is a state of darkness, and we don't know we're in it. You've seen people behave, and perhaps you've seen yourself behave in a very bad way, in an unpleasant way, in a rude way, and you know that if you said to the person, perhaps another person in this case who was behaving rudely, and you said to that person, do you know, are you aware that your manner is very bad, that you're behaving rudely toward me and toward other people? You know what the reaction would be, don't you? Because it is unconscious and you have very, very briefly touched him where he's living falsely from, he or she doesn't want to hear what you said, And in order to cover up the pain and to push it away, he or she will make a rude remark in return, like, who's rude? Or you're rude, not me, something like that. This person doesn't see that his rudeness, his bad manners, his crudeness, his violence is a cover-up for his own sickness, which he won't admit. Now this is the actual human condition, and you know it. You know it about the world out there, about society, and you know it about yourself. That is, you feel it in the sense, not conscious of it, because if you're conscious, it wouldn't be there. It would disappear. But you sense it, and you know that you're your own worst enemy, or that I am. If you were to take just tonight, now you've been to many talks and you're going to be to more, if you would take this one idea that your difficulties are caused by unconscious pretense, you would break through much faster than you're doing now, but you forget it because you call it by another name. When we're arrogant, for example, and pretend we know something and want to convince other people that we understand something, we call it brilliant talk or rhetoric, or we call it anything that puts a noble label on a very ignoble condition. And again, we come back to the principle of self-honesty. If any human being wants to continue to lie about his life, that's his privilege, that's her privilege. And if you are really students of the light, you had better make up your mind to have as little to do as possible with people like this, because they will try, being very evil, darkness being evil, they will try to drag you down and keep you down to the level that they're at, because this is how they feel comfortable, by pulling other people down to where they are and associating with people who are as crude as they are, who are as sick as they are. This is why when health, real spiritual health, real inner health begins to develop inside of you, you look out at the people you're associating with, whose homes you visit, and all by itself, you know you can't continue with that association anymore. There's nothing in common. You don't want it. You can't waste your life anymore. We've done it long enough. And it's so effortless to do this, not that you're self-righteous about it, or not that you feel superior about it, but you know you just are not going to hang around with liars, with crude people. Because, look, and we even say to ourselves, look, I'm no better than they are. I know that. I know I lie myself, and I know how much violence I have in myself. But I do know something that they don't know, which is that I don't want to live that way anymore. And I know they don't want to go along with me. And I know they're not going along with me. And don't you try to get them to go along with you, because they'll try to hold you back, as I said before. Now let me tell you a story that will illustrate a little better what we're talking about. A beautiful story. Don't get ahead of me now, or you'll make wrong conclusions. Imagine a man who lives in one of the swampy regions of probably down south of the United States, southern state, swampy region. And he knows the area well. He knows the swamps, miserable, cold, and damp. And while living in this area, swampy area, he commits a crime of some kind. And he has to leave the state. Police send out a bulletin on him, all points bulletin, get this man. So he flees, runs away. And he goes up to, say, Ohio, trying to escape the law. And he's sitting in a cafe one day, and a man comes over to him and sits down opposite. He says, hey, don't I recognize you? Aren't you from southern state down there? And he gets a little nervous because he thinks the man might be a policeman. And he says, no, I'm from somewhere else. And the man continues to press him a little bit, makes him a little more nervous all the time. And he said, well, if you're not from Florida, Louisiana, where are you from? He says, I'm from the Rocky Mountains, a high place up there. The man says, oh, I know the Rockies. I've traveled through there a good deal. What's the name of the town you live in? Man's getting more upset all the time as to where the conversation is going. He says, oh, it's a little town you wouldn't know much about, just off on the side of a mountain up there. The man pressed him again. He says, well, I understand that Route 88 leads through there. Is that correct? Right through your town? I understand that when I lived there, that was the name of the route. Man began to see that he probably had detective after him, so he gets some excuse and says, I'm going to get another cup of coffee. See you in a minute, but he slips out the side door and runs away. Same thing happens again in Minnesota where he goes next. He's talking to a man in his hotel in the lobby. A man comes over and starts to ask him where he lives. And he says, I live in the Rocky Mountains. See the point? Don't go too fast. We have committed one crime, which I'll get to in a minute. And when we have, we constantly have to invent lies and excuses to try to convince people that we're from somewhere else. Therefore, we couldn't have committed a crime in the South somewhere. This makes us nervous. This makes us irritable. Someone comes along. Do you know that even meeting someone in this room for the first time, or old friends for this church first time, if you were nervous, it's because you're from the South, from the swampland, or I am? Now let's see what we mean by that. We are all criminals only in one sense. And that one sense is we have committed the crime of not developing. None whatever than that. But we become a chronic criminal, a psychological criminal, hurting ourselves and hurting other people only because we won't go back to where we committed the crime. That is, go back and study the nature that is doing that, studying that so that we become innocent in the eyes of spiritual law. The only way that criminal who's running away from the swamps could ever be free and not be nervous anymore and not be afraid and not be running around wasting his life is to go back there and admit that he committed the crime, in which case he would be penalized in some way, but then he'd be freed. Very few people will do what is necessary to set themselves free from this very, very low level of development, which is a crime. And it's, guess what is a crime against? Well, let's make a few lists. It's a crime against you or me living in authentic happiness. As if people want to be happy. If you want to be happy, you can be. In the real meaning of that. As if, come on. As if people want peace of mind. Don't you believe anyone when they tell you they want to be happy? They don't, because they could be. God doesn't lie. There are certain books in this world, and there are certain teachers in this world who pass on messages from a very high place, and they say, ladies and gentlemen of this earth, if you don't want to be torn apart, if you don't want to be afraid of the government, if you don't want to be afraid of your neighbor, if you don't want to be afraid of human nature, which is very sick, if you don't want to be afraid, you don't have to be. If you want inner poise that nothing can disturb, nothing whatever, if you want that command of your life, it is entirely possible. So what's the problem? Here are people, look at this, if you could see it. Here's the masses of humanity, and they're all talking about peace within and peace between nations. They're always talking about striving for the better life. They're talking about being good to their neighbor. Now, can you see? Look, God says this is possible. Then why doesn't it happen? Why doesn't it occur? And you had better see tonight, and don't waste another day on it, And you had better see that when human beings, maybe you, maybe me, which would be a good thing to see, when we say we want happiness, we're pretending. What we mean when we say we want happiness and contentment and want a different kind of life, what we mean when we say that is we want a fulfillment of our desires, regardless of how it hurts anyone else. What do we care about anyone else as long as I get what I want? That is what we call happiness. Maybe, just maybe, you and me had better sit down very quietly sometime at home and ask yourself a very startling question, which is this: where on earth, and it came from earth, believe me, where on earth did I get this very strange idea of what it means to be happy? This could begin a marvelous investigation into several areas, including our conditioning, including our glib use of words. You say you want to be happy, you tell me what will make you happy. And I'll tell you that when you get it, you'll be just as distraught and as empty as you were before. And you know it, and I know it, because on the law of averages, we get a certain percentage of the things that we ask for, and we remain just as we are before. And then we have to start the search all over again. We have to get a new goal. We have to get a new aim. We have to find something else that we say. See, we kid ourselves by saying, when I get that, then I will feel happy. But you can't be happy in that way, because there's no one here to be made happy. When you go home tonight, if you do nothing more from this meeting than take a piece of paper and write down one word on it, just one word, and be ruthless in your investigation of it, the word pretense. And if you were to take that, you actually put it in your pocket, and you carry it around with you, and you start observing other people and yourself equally, and you go out there and you see that boss, for example, you see him playing the role of a boss because it's expected of him. And he, at one time, for example, he's playing the role of the nice fellow who loves all his employees and all that. That's one of his roles. And the next minute he's playing the role of being someone who's very badly persecuted by someone else, maybe a rival firm or something. See how pretense is essential. Pretense is essential to our misery. If you were to give up your pretense of all kinds, who would you be? If I gave up all forms of bluffing, of hoaxing, if I gave them up, what word could I use to describe me? You wouldn't have any word. You'd go blank beautifully. Do you understand that when you no longer describe yourself, when you no longer put a name on yourself, when you no longer attribute any kind of either virtues or vices to yourself, that you are a truly, authentically innocent human being who never hurts anyone, and who's in a state, if you can see it, who's in a state where it's impossible for you to ever longer hurt yourself. Wouldn't that be something? To be so free of this pseudo-identity, of this pretenseful self, to have absolutely nothing there that reacts to the attacks of the world, to the threats of the world. Because when there's no one there to be threatened, how does the threat exist? When you exist, when you no longer exist as a victim, where's the attacker? Do you understand? If you insult me, if you call me bad names, if you run me down in some way, you criticize me. If I'm not living from a pretended self of being a nice man, for example, pretended self of being a good man, a spiritual man, and if you attack that picture, then of course I'm going to feel bad and I'm going to attack you back. What if I don't know who I am? Completely don't know who I am, and you accuse me of being this or that. Where's it going to fall? Am I going to strike back and say, you called me this and I'm not this, I am that. You called me bad and I'm really good. And I'm going to strike back at you because I'm really good. Would there be any reaction at all? If I take a ball in my hand and throw it through the air, and there's nothing 2 yards from me there, the ball continues to go because it's not being stopped by anything. What can the whole world out there, what can the whole world inside you, if it's still there, the negative world, if it's still there, what can it do against you if you're not a wall? If you've destroyed the wall of all your conditionings, of all your wishes to feel secure? Yes, you've abolished all your wishes to feel secure because you've understood that it's a false state and no one and nothing can make you feel secure. Then when the world attacks you, I wish I could tell you what I could see right now as I'm talking to you, but I can't. Then when the world attacks you, your security with a capital S, your certainty with a capital C is there. Because there's nothing to stop the javelin or the sword of the world. There's no disappointment. There's no heartache. Because the person who is suffering, and the person who had the heartache, has understood quite thoroughly after many years of hard work that the only way he existed is in his own self-descriptions, and those have been dropped because he sees all they do is cause pain and he doesn't want to suffer anymore. I'll tell you, you want to conquer the world, the whole universe? I've just told you how to do it. You become absolutely untouchable. Now, I am talking about things that you call practical, and which are indeed, on the level of this social life, practical. I'm talking about you being free of all problems connected with money. Every single one of them. There's no problem you can mention. Oh, I'll tell you now. You'll see now. There's no financial problem that you can mention that God can't solve. As a matter of fact, it doesn't need to be solved, because you don't live in this world. The physical body does. The present one you're inhabiting most certainly does. And it requires certain things while living in the physical world. But your spirit isn't here at all. You can walk right down into that office where you work. You can walk into the home, and you can walk down the street. And while the body is there, you're not. You're standing there with your physical eyes, observing what's going on down at that bank when you cash a check. You observe what happens when the newsboy throws the paper out and the paper spreads out and it has horrible news about this sick world. It's not your news. It's not your news because you haven't been wasting your life for the last few years. You've been doing something very intelligent with it. No nobody will know. Nobody but you and perhaps other people that you're working with. Nobody will know that you're definitely in this world, but not of it. Look at all the phrases in the spiritual literature that give descriptions of this kind of life, where all the arrows of the enemy will fall harmless at your feet, and the swords will drop out of the hands of your attackers. Because there's no one to be attacked. Only a person, whether it's you, whether it's me, only a person who hasn't evolved, who's undeveloped, who's still living in the swamp, can be a victim of other sick people. If you're a victim of any sick human being in this world, it's because you're still sick yourself. And that's a fact. If you don't want to be a victim, then God says there's a way for you to be healthy, for you to not be a raving maniac, to not be cruel anymore, to not be vicious, to not suffer, to not be aggressive, to not snipe at people, to not walk around in a daze thinking that you're awake, to not drain other people's energy. What I've described with words, it is possible for each one of you here in this room to experience. And then you will know it without words. You won't have to explain it to anyone. You won't have to try to convince yourself. Anything we try to convince ourselves of is pretense, a pretenseful action. You'll be very quiet inside yourself. And other people will look at you and they will think that you are like they are. How else can they do? They have to project their own state, don't they? I'm telling you that when you're in this state, you will conquer the world. And that conquest will not be by your own efforts, except your efforts to get rid of your old nature, but by the grace of something that is much higher than our own nature. Then your life, whatever it might be, is completely effortless. Of course, you go to work or you stay home and you go out to dinner and you watch television and you lead a very normal life. But never, never, never again will you ever hurt yourself or any other person. The life of pretense is gone. The life of reality has taken its place. That's real peace, and that's lasting happiness. And that happiness is not just for the few years that we're here on earth, but for all of eternity. And you will know that because you'll be living in eternity even while you're living here on this temporary earth. You will know it. Because God has given you that secret. Now, I will assume that you are here because you want to rise above the world. You want to change the world you live in, even while living in it socially and physically. I want you to know, in no way, at no time, at no place, will anyone ever give you help. At no time will anyone stand in back of your efforts to destroy your conditioning. I want you to know that no one on earth is going to back you up because you're living in a world that's so cowardly. All they know to do is to cringe and do what is wrong. They won't ever stand up for what is right. They'll let you be crucified. That's what devils they are. They'll crucify you themselves. And this is the kind of friends you want? This is the kind of people you're associating with? You must be insane. when a challenge comes up, when there's an opportunity for, and I'm talking about some of you people in our study group up in Boulder City. I've seen you behave. I've seen what cowards you are. When an opportunity arises for you to do the right thing, the true thing, which could destroy something false in you, you refuse and you sit back with frozen faces like little cowards and refuse to stand up for God. And you wonder, and you have the nerve to wonder why you don't have peace of mind. If you're backing up what is false, you're going to be miserable. There it is. I just gave you one sentence which was worth you driving 1,000 miles here tonight. If you're going to go along with your sick friends, you are going to suffer the consequences of it. There's no way you can avoid it because you and your friends are on the same sick level. Not having seen your own pretense, you don't see the phoniness in your other friends except to criticize it. It's in order to make yourself feel better by comparison. But you don't see the depths of it. If you saw the depths of it, you'd change your friendships mighty fast. And you'd learn the great value and the great power in living alone inwardly. Then you can associate with other people as you wish. They won't be able to take anything from you. You can go down to work with all those people down there who all they can think about is their cocktail parties and their horse races and their gambling, bragging about how much money they're making, and all the great projects they have. You can associate with them and not be contaminated by them. Back to the original point, and then you can ask more questions if you like. You had better know that you're going to have to stand all alone in this journey. And if you don't stand alone, you won't grow. You grow by departing from all the forces of darkness that are in you and that are in other people. And your departure will be equal, of course, because as you begin to see your own darkness and want nothing more to do with it, that is the same thing as departing from it. And when that is understood in yourself, you understood you can't afford those friends anymore. I'll tell you a test of how I'll tell each one of you who have come here tonight a test of how really sincere you are. Don't tell me you're sincere. Don't try to convince yourself. Don't try to convince me that you're sincere. There is one test, and this is the absolute test. If you're really sincere, if you're really sick and tired of living in this sick world because you've got the same thing in yourself, if you're really fed up, you will spend your whole day going on with your usual duties, of course, working, whatever. But you'll spend every second you can in self-work, watching yourself walk up on these steps, for example, reading, coming to meetings, talking with other people about these ideas, helping each other. Now you listen to what I'm going to say. And don't you get out of it, because there's no way you can get out of it. You either love God or you don't. And if you don't love God and truth, what's the alternative? You love darkness. And you love darkness because that is what you are. And you're loving your own sick nature. And you're destroying yourself. This is not negative. I'm not being negative. This is knowledge. This is counsel. This is telling you about yourself so that you'll know what you have to do, so you won't be caught in the psychic sleep of mankind anymore. that we've all been caught in, that we were born into. We were born into this sick world, but we don't have to stay in it. Don't forget, if you want the greatest fun, the greatest adventure, the most exciting event of your life, this is it. This will become your major fun in life, to work on yourself. To see how much deeper you can go into all these unconscious forces that have been hurting us all these years. It's, you know what's fun? Well, isn't it fun to take a brick off your back? Isn't it more fun to take 2 bricks off your back? Triple fun to take 3 bricks off your back? That's fun, and you will feel it. You will feel yourself walking much lighter day by day as these principles are applied, and you let truth work on you, work for you. You literally walk lighter. Physically too, you really would. Can't you tell by people's physical manner, their inner state, how heavy they are inwardly? Just by the way they move, they're so discouraged, and they slump, and they go like that. You can tell all about it. So what are you going to do tomorrow, for example, now that you've come here tonight and heard truly inspiring things, truly challenging things? Now that you heard something it's unbelievable, it really is unbelievable, because it's not on the level of belief. Something marvelous beyond thought, marvelous beyond description. I cannot possibly, I'll speak personally for a minute, I can't possibly describe to you, tell you, by sitting here and using words, I can't tell you what I see and what I know exists just as much for you as for me.
Vernon, there are a few people here this evening who may not know when we talk about sleep, the relationship to mechanical behavior, to programming that we've been subjected to all of our lives. I wonder if you'd go into it, please.
All right, start off with the first principle of it, is that when we're in a state of spiritual sleep, psychological sleep, mental sleep, we don't know that we are. Never forget that. If you go out of here tonight, say you go to a cafe or you talk to someone somewhere, gas station, that man who is taking the gas pump and put the gas in your tank, that waitress who brings the coffee over, puts it down on the table, you look back, you see the chef with his white cap on back in the kitchen back there. You see the young couple come in the door, you see the elderly couple go out the door. Everyone around, they are all human beings in a state of sleep. And obviously you don't go up and say, "Sir, madam, do you know that you're asleep?" They'll have you locked up. But you know they are because you knew that you were at one time. And if someone had come up and said, "Do you know that you're spiritually asleep, sir?" You know, you'd think they're a religious nut or something. Spiritual sleep is unconscious. So this means I'm going to have to see what the elements are of unconscious sleep. And that's the simplest thing in the world if, Bruce, you have this self-honesty. What does psychic sleep consist of? It's so simple I don't have to work hard at it at all. It consists of anything and everything that is wrong in me. Addition that I won't admit. That's what sleep consists of. Doesn't this describe everyone on earth? Everyone, including ourselves. Remember how arrogant we could be, maybe still are. Remember how pretenseful we were, that we understood, that we pretending that we knew what we are doing with our lives. What a lie. What a shameless lie, that we knew what we were doing with our lives. We knew it so well that get up and walk out of a meeting like this. What's this man talking about? I know what life is all about. Don't try to talk to a person like that. Let the world descend into hell. That's what it has chosen. And that's where it is now. By the grace of God, every once in a while, a man or a woman is walking down the street or sitting at home. It could be after a disaster of some kind, after a divorce, after a fight with someone, after some kind of a misfortune of some kind. And every once in a while, God will talk to that person in the depths of his hell, and that person will listen. And that's an authentic miracle on earth, when God talks and someone who is broken listens. Instead of then instead of fighting the world and hating the world for his problems, he listens to God's instruction, which is, "Sir, madam, find out why you have these problems, this heartache, this hell inside you. Find out why you have it, and I will instruct you step by step." That person then begins to see that he was in what we use describing words to describe sleep, unconsciousness. He begins to see where he is, and seeing where he is must automatically be followed by awakening from psychic sleep. Then he starts to change. It's a long, long process, going over a long time. Then he begins to be just that much less cruel, because he understands. Then he gets just that much less worried, because he understands. He understands that they are part of this sleep which he no longer wants. And he is beginning to be a truly religious man. He's beginning to be a truly spiritual human being. And always, where you're truly spiritual, how can there be vanity involved? How can you go around telling people how much you know about God and about religion when you really know? Because there's no I there to brag about it. Generally, you know this, religious people are sleeping people. They're vicious people. And if you don't agree with how clever they are, how religious, if you don't, they say, "I walk with God every day," and if you were to tell them, do you know that you just told me a lie? They will hate you, and they wouldn't even see the contradiction between them saying that they live in the love of God and the fact that they shot you a vicious look and vicious words. That, do you know that person, that religious person, or that non-religious person is living in hell? All right, those who have chosen hell may have it. I don't want it. Do you want it? You don't have to choose it anymore, because God does exist, whether you know it or not. I know he does. I know that truth exists. I know that you can change. I know how rare it is for people to choose this, but I do know that if you want it, you can have it. Good night.